Hey guys, welcome back to the Joy of Wrenching. My name's Les, I'm your friendly neighborhood mechanic, and today in the shop I've got this gorgeous 2019 Ford Expedition, and it has the big 3.5 Ecoboost engine in it. And the problem that this one has right now is it has an oil leak from the front of the engine on the timing cover. Now it's not the typical place for an oil leak for one of these Ecoboost engines, so I wanted to go through here, show you where it's at, and then let's get to it and find what the problem is together. So this Expedition just has a little over 100,000 miles on it, and it's developed an oil leak on the front of the engine. So I want to get in there and I want to show you where that's at, and maybe together we can figure out what's going on. So let's look in from above and just look down inside of here as best we can, and maybe you can just start to see a little bit of that oil residue, but there's so much piping, there's so many things in the way here. I think the best view that we're going to get is from underneath, so let me take you there. Okay, so I think we're going to get a better view looking down here, so let's take you underneath the car, come up in here, and there we go. All right, so there's our oil leak. As you can see, that oil is staining the front cover, and if we follow it as high as we can, it doesn't go up to the valve covers at all. So it's starting somewhere in this area of the edge of the valve, or the edge of that timing cover, and it's slinging over here onto our air conditioning compressor and then running down. It doesn't look like it covers this side at all, and it's not appearing to be leaking from anywhere else on this timing cover. Let's see if we can get underneath here and take a look. Yeah, look at that. So it's not a horrible oil leak, but it's pretty, I mean, it's bad enough. I mean, this thing is still a new car. It's, you know, it's a 2019, and you don't want your new car leaking oil. So we're going to get up there and we're going to figure out, where's this thing leaking? Why is it leaking? Is it a defect somehow? Well, and then we're going to cure it. So come along and let's get into it. Now, it's common for you to hear that an Ecoboost has an oil leak on the passenger side of the vehicle, as this one does, but typically on the Ecoboost, or at least the older versions, which had the vacuum pump back here on the back of the passenger side head, that's where they would leak oil from. This one is a later model Ecoboost, and they don't leak there because they don't have that issue any longer. This one is leaking from a somewhat unique, at least in my experience, area, and so it'll be interesting to find out why that is. And so in order to get to that, we're going to have to take all of this spaghetti jumbled mess off of the front of the engine here, including all of our accessories and pulleys and belts and everything, water pump, all of that has to come off. And we're going to go ahead and remove this timing cover and reseal it. First thing we need to remove of this jumbled mess down here is going to be our air intake pipes, these big plastic pipes here for the induction, and those are held on with these worm clamps, and these are 7mm. Just loosen these things up and then we'll be able to release these. There we go. Now, next thing I'm going to undo is this thing here, and this little clamp just twists and pulls off, just like that. All right, so now, let's see if we can get these loose. Not quite. I may have to break that seal there between the hose and the piping, but if you do, you can get a little pick and put it between the two and pull them apart. Looks like these are coming apart a little bit easier than that one over there. And I may need to loosen it up just a little bit more than I did in some cases. I'm pulling apart these tubes. I noticed this one got a lot of oil pouring out of the bottom of it. That's rebreathed oil. So a lot of people will put a a catch can on these Ecoboosts to try and catch some of that, because that oil will get inside of your intercooler and make it a little less efficient over time. Now, if you're in the unfortunate position like me to have to work on something like this and really be up over the top of the engine for a long period of time, I highly recommend that you invest in one of these things. I'm not sponsored by it, but I will put a link in the description to it. A topside creeper. Man, that thing saves your back and your legs and your knees. The older we get, let's face it, the more we need that. But it just makes everything so much easier to access on top of the engine, and you can just kind of lay on top of it. Really makes it a lot more enjoyable. So again, the name of this channel is The Joy of Wrenching. This is one of the ways that you keep the joy in wrenching. The first thing we want to remove from the top side here is this beauty cover or silencer. And we got a couple of 10mm nuts on studs down in these little wells here. And then you just lift up on it and pull it forward to get it out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and put my hardware back where I got it so that I don't have to bag and tag everything, and it just keeps things nice and neat. Let's see what we got here. It looks like a little bit of water pooling in some of these little divots here. Here's our high pressure pump here, and just sort of a visual check. A number of the Ecoboosts of the earlier vintage will develop cracks in these valve covers, and so you just want to make sure that there's no oil leaks from the valve cover area here. And if you do see oil leaks up on the top of the valve covers, oftentimes check for cracks in areas like that. This one's got a little bit of a oil weeping past these solenoids here for the cam phasers, and we're going to replace the gaskets, including all of these, so that we don't have any more leaks there either. But as you can see, the oil leak down here that we're concerned about is not coming from up here. There's a little bit of weepage here, but that's not going any further than the valve cover, so that's not the cause. We're still on the hunt for our cause of our oil leak. Now that the beauty cover, the engine cover, is removed, let's go ahead and start working on some of these air pipes. So, like everything else, orange clamps, 7mm, loosen them up. There's another one down here. Let's see if we can get to it. Oh goodness, a bit of a tight fit in there. May not be able to show you. Come on. And do yourself a favor, when you go to put this stuff back on, you can spin these clamps around sometimes to be more accessible in the future. Alright. In addition to those clamps, we've got a ton of little hoses and things that we're going to have to undo, but I'm going to take it one step at a time. Here's an electrical connector. And we're going to go ahead and take these things loose. Most of these are going to be squeeze and pinch and pull type things to get loose. Wire connected there. Alright. There we go. Squeeze and pull. Okay. And tuck this thing out of the way. Now, one of the things I like to do is put a piece of really bright colored tape on anything that I unplug. And that'll be a good tip for you guys too, because that way whenever you start putting things back together, something like this, black on black, it might blend in and you may forget to plug that thing back in. But if you see a piece of orange tape wrapped around something when you're done, you know, hey, I'm not completely finished hooking things back up. There we go, that's better. Now that thing will stand out like a sore thumb, that piece of orange tape, whenever you go to put things back together. All you got to do is have a glance in the engine bay real quick and you'll be like, ah, there's a piece of orange tape. I'm not done. Okay, with these 3 worm clamps undone, here, here, and down here. We can go ahead and remove this piece, but it's got a coolant overflow line sort of snapped into it. So we'll pull that off of here, one-handed, and free this up. So that made a little bit of room in here. We've got this pipe here which goes all the way down and underneath, and we'll have to go down there and disconnect it at the bottom. Looks like that might be easier to get to from the wheel well over here on the passenger side, but I'll show you that here as we figure out what we need to do there. Then we've got these crossover pipes as well, and still a menagerie of things. So what I'll probably try to do is, again, we're just trying to make room to work in the front of this engine bay, so I'll probably undo some things and maybe pull them to the side as much as I can, you know, kind of halfway leave things attached where I can get away with it. So let's get started with some of these hoses and just move them out of the way. And every one of them, I think it must be some kind of a challenge at the manufacturers to just come up with weird ways to connect hoses, and they'll have a dozen different ones on the same vehicle. It just sometimes doesn't make sense. But this one here, you got to move this little tab up on both sides and then push it in. Try and do this with one hand here, and then you can kind of grab it. And of course everything's aluminum, so my magnetic light doesn't want to stick to anything. Goodness gracious. I'm trying to get you guys the best quality of lighting as possible here. There we go. So once you get this thing pulled out like that, you can slide these hoses off. And then, let's see if we can just swing this stuff up and out of our way. I think so. But it may also just be as easy to go ahead and remove it. Looks like we've got another one of those clamps back here. So we'll pull these towards us and then up. Again, kind of tough to do with one hand, but you get the gist. So let's get this guy here. We'll just lift this tab up. Once we've got the little green tabs pulled forward, slide it off with the booster. And I heard some vacuum release, so you know that that's got a good seal. And it looks like we're attached over here a little bit. I'll go ahead and release this white tab. Anytime you see a tab on a connector, you'll probably have to release that to squeeze it and take it off like that. Okay. We got us another one down here. This one's yellow. Same sort of thing. You got to lift the little tabs on the back to push it out, and then you can slip it off. Here we go. So this thing is almost free, except it's kind of tethered to the air box here with a little Christmas tree. We'll go ahead and wiggle that Christmas tree loose. There we go. And that gets that out of our way. Starting to free up a little bit of space, and since I took another electrical connector apart, I'm going to put that flagging tape on it so that I'll remind myself to put it back together. Okay, looks like we've got another couple of clips here. This one's got a red clip, and it's just squeezed together. The little tabs on the back and push it forward. And then a green clip too. And again, they just, I mean, I tell you, these guys come up with, they just dream of different ways to make clips and little attachment points that all have their own little special way of coming apart. For what reason? If you guys know, let me know. Goodness. And there's the red one. And then it's also attached to the inlet over here at the throttle body. So we'll go ahead and detach it. Wow. A million of these things. Evap hoses. This is part of the purge valve system here. So we can take those apart. It's got 4 clips, not just 2 little fingers, but 4 fingers that have to be released in order to slide that lock out of the way. Wow. What a mess. Okay. And it may help to use a little pick or a little pocket screwdriver with some of these things to release the little fingers. Just try not to break them, because if you do, obviously it won't hold on as well, and you may get a little bit of an air leak. And set an evap code, check engine light, whatever, for a small evap leak. Those things can be really annoying and hard to find. There we go. Just had to pinch and squeeze it a few different ways. Okay, let's go back here and let's get this purge valve undone. So we'll take our safety clip, slide it back, pinch and squeeze it, and then undo this side of the green clip and the other side of the green clips. I tell you what, these green clips are difficult to get apart. All right, let me take you in here real quick, show you what I undid. So I got the purge valve undone. There's electrical connector. I've got that orange tape on. Then these green tabs. And it comes over here, connects up near the throttle body, comes over here, and connects up to this air hose. So now that that's undone, we can go ahead and lift it up and get it out of our way. So this one is next. Let's see what we have to do. Let's follow it down here to the passenger side and see what we got to do to remove it. So down here in the passenger wheel well area, you'll be able to see through that hole there, and there's a worm clamp where it attaches that tube to the front, the intake side of the turbo there. So we'll undo that there. And then also, if you look up through here, you see where I've wet these areas. I put some WD-40 on that. It's a little pro tip for you. Anytime you got one of these little tabs that has to stab into a little rubber grommet, spray them with WD-40 and they'll come apart a whole lot easier. So here, let me show you an example of one of those grommets I was talking about. So see this pipe right here has a grommet that holds it into that little area right there. Spray it with some WD, wiggle it, it pops right out just like that, and then right back in, right back out, no problem at all. You see how nice and lubricated that is. And I've undone the other end of this pipe from the turbo down there, so hopefully now we can give it a little wiggle. Yep, there we go. Came off the turbo and up and out she comes. And I'm going to set this over here on this side so that I remember where these pipes go. Next piece of the puzzle is going to be this pipe right here. We undid the worm clamp over here on this end above the turbo, and it's got a grommet that stabs in right here. Got some WD on that, and then when we were under the truck to begin with, we undid the other end of this thing. So just pop it out of the grommet, pop it out of that tube over there, and then let's see, how do we work this thing out of here? What kind of a rotation event do we need to do? Maybe it needs to go underneath the car to come out. I don't know. There we go. I think it may actually go out under the car easier than through the top, but let's see. Okay. Now we'll come up through the top. Just rotate, twist, pull, and out she comes. Now we're starting to free up a lot of room in front of this engine. Still got a few more pipes to come apart, and then we're going to have to drain the coolant system and take those coolant pipes out of the way, and we'll be in business. Alright, next piece of this puzzle that we're going to take apart is going to be this air pipe right here. I've labeled it number 3. I've undone this worm clamp on this side. It's got a little grommet that it stabs in here, and then when we first began, we undid the other end under the truck. So let's see if we can wiggle this thing free somehow. Pop it up out of the grommet. There we go. Now up out of the grommet. Now this end here is kind of sticky. So you may find if these ends with the near the turbos are kind of stuck, you may find you need to get a little pick or something in between the rubber and the plastic hose to release that grip. but I was able to pull that one free. Now let's see, how do we maneuver this thing out? It looks like it needs to kind of come up, and this pipe right here is kind of restricting us a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this end here of this pipe just by picking up on this blue tab, sliding it out, and then wiggling the thing to release it. Yet another crazy idea from the engineers on a connector. That's hard to do with one hand. There it goes. Okay, so we'll swing that just back a little bit like that. That way we don't have to remember where it goes. And then see if that gives us a little bit more freedom to get this pipe up and out. There we go. It's a tight fit, that is for sure. These things probably will come out a little easier once you have the coolant pipes and everything undone. Looks like they're kind of binding up on some of these coolant lines, so we may save that, but we'll see. So to get this air pipe out, we're going to have to remove this intake where it connects to the throttle body. And so I've already unplugged the connector here and popped it out of its little Christmas tree holder, loosened up this clamp right here, and then broken the seal between this rubber and the throttle body. Squirt a little WD in there, and it'll slide off a whole lot easier. Come on, don't make a liar out of me. Oof. Kind of hard to do with one hand. It needs a little bit more than one hand. There it goes. Come on, all the way. There you go. All right, and now the other end of this pipe, remember we took loose under the car to begin with, so we should be able to rotate this thing, pop it loose from down there, and then drag it all up through here. Okay, I popped it loose from its hose down there, and now we can try and rotate it a dozen different ways to try and get it up and out of the engine bay. I'm going to need two hands, but I'll bring it back and show you how it's done. So yeah, once I'm done, you can grab this thing and rotate it and pull it straight out the top. So now that this air intake to the throttle body is out of the way, let's see if we can get this pipe out. So pop it out of the grommet, pop it loose from its hose in the back. It's already undone from down below because we did that to begin with. And then I'm just pulling up. Seems like it's coming a little bit. Rotate, wiggle and rotate. Boy, it's down there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it is definitely snaked down through all of that stuff down there. All of the hoses. Let me see if pushing it down is any easier. I don't think it will be. It looks to be. Okay, there we go. So that was the trick. All right, let me show you again. So the trick is to rotate this thing like so, and then come up. There we go. All right, so last of the air inlet pipes that we need to undo is going to be this guy here. And really we could probably get away with leaving it in place because I think I could probably get to the timing cover pretty well with this still here. But it's not too hard to remove now that you got everything else out of the way, and it'll probably make for better filming, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's got a little grommet that it pushes into, so once you put the WD on it and work it a little bit, it'll just pop right out, see, like that. And then on the other end it attaches to the turbo, and the way you get to that is come down through the wheel well and then look through this little gap back here. And you'll see the bolt or the worm clamp that you need to undo right there. So undo that and then fish that out. So I went through the wheel well over there to undo the worm clamp, popped it out of this grommet here, and then just pull it forward and it comes loose from your turbo. Now the front pipe here, it is connected to this pipe which we undid underneath. You see I'm moving it there? We undid that to begin with under the truck, and so all of this can now come up and out together. So the only remaining things in the front of the timing cover that are in our way are going to be all of these coolant hoses. So it's time to drain the coolant, remove this overflow tank here, and then get some of these hoses out of our way. So it's time to drain the coolant out of the system, and there's lots of different ways to do that. Typically, you'd go to the bottom of your radiator, which is way up here on this vehicle, actually higher than the engine almost. And you would open the petcock in one of the corners and drain it out. But another way is just to pop one of the hoses off that's near the bottom of the engine. And so looking at this Ecoboost, it looks like on these later models we've got a cooler here for the transmission fluid, and it's got a hose right here that looks like it would be easy to disconnect, drain our coolant, and I'm going to catch it in a bucket so I know how much I got out of there, and then hopefully this will work. So let's see. Well, let's see how this goes. So we got another handy dandy clamp of some kind here. Squeeze both ears in. Looks like you got to squeeze both ears in, and then you can pull apart the fitting. Now I'm going to try and catch whatever comes out here. There we go. Yeah. Well, that'll do it. We're getting a good drain on. That'll be the quickest and easiest way I can think of to drain the coolant system out of this 2019 Expedition. All right, well, looks like it's starting to slow down. That's good. And we have caught 5 quarts draining it from there. Obviously it's not done yet, but let me look and see if our reservoir is empty. It appears to be. I'm going to squeeze some of these hoses, and as I do that, maybe you'll see a little bit more come out down there. But yeah, that's worked pretty slick. We're down to somewhat of a trickle now, so I'm going to say that's probably enough. So I'm going to put this back on here, wiggle it back in place, and she's reconnected. And that was way faster than some petcock on the radiator or something else. But we got a good 6 liters or almost 6 quarts out of it. Now that the coolant is drained out of the system, I guess we'll just start working our way from the top down, removing the cooling system parts. So let's take off this reservoir here. It's connected over here to our thermostat housing, and it's got a connection down here where we'll have to pull this little metal spring clip loose, and we've got a degas overflow over here for the radiator, so we'll just squeeze these and get those off, and then it bolts up with 2 looks like 10mm bolts. Remove the clamp, pull this off, and we'll just tuck it back out of the way somewhere, and down here move the clamp, pull it off, it's free, and then under here just lift up on this metal tab and then pull off. And then the 2 10mm bolts hold the sides of this reservoir. And then we can lift it up and get it out of the way. Now while we're in here with our 10mm, it'd be a good time to go ahead and take the negative cable off the battery. So loosen this with a 10mm, wiggle it, stuff it down there where it won't connect again. Just tuck it down out of the way, that way it can't spring back up and accidentally reconnect. Now the next coolant hose we probably want to deal with is going to be this large one that goes to the thermostat. And so it too is just a squeeze clamp, pull it back, wiggle it off, and then we'll try and tuck it back also out of our way. May have to bungee it out of the way, but we'll just keep it attached elsewhere. Alright, so there's that disconnected, and I was hoping that we could just pull this back and out of the way, but it's connected to another hose that has this heat shielding on it, goes to your heater core, and that is connected down here with a couple of zip ties. So to get a little bit of freedom, you can probably cut this zip tie right here and get this thing to swing up and kind of out of the way a little bit. So let's try that. All right, now that we're detached from here, So we pull this up and out of our way a little bit, but not really all the way, because it's connected to this heater hose right here. And so you can either disconnect this connection here at the heater hose, or you can disconnect over here at the top of the radiator, which may be a little bit easier, just because those heater hose connections can be a little bit of a booger sometimes. All right, much easier to disconnect the upper radiator hose completely like this, and then we can take this thing and kind of route it some way and tuck it out of our hair like that. And plus it gives you a better access to this clamp in case you did want to take it off of there. All right, well, I was able to get this thing disconnected. Not gonna lie to you, that was a little bit of a booger. You just got to squeeze these little tabs on either side enough to get it to unlatch and pull it apart. Now we can get this upper radiator hose out of our way. All right, so the next hose down, we're just working top to bottom, is going to be this one here that connected to the bottom of the coolant reservoir. We're going to detach here at the water pump and then follow the hoses around, and it goes over here to, looks like a little bit of a solenoid of some kind. And so we'll detach it at both of those ends and get this out of here. All right, let's get this thing loose. So we've got this disconnected from the water pump here. There's a little clip right here that holds it to the larger radiator hose. Looks like it's got its own little clip holding it to another hose right here in the middle. We'll go ahead and just separate these. Okay, and then follow it on around to the solenoid and slide it off the solenoid. There we go. All right. Now I took some pictures, and you might do this also just to help remind yourself where all these things go and how they were routed in relation to one another. But there is that next hose out. Add it to the bone pile. All right, we're starting to see some space in here now. Okay, the next thing that I want to move is this, which is your auxiliary water pump. That's right, you got a second water pump on these vehicles because it has the auto stop-start feature, and this just keeps hot water circulating through the heater core whenever you're at the stoplight and the engine shuts off. And it also helps to just circulate some of the hot water that's trapped in the engine through the cooling system. So we'll unbolt this bracket here, and then it looks like it's held in over here to this plastic tray where the grommets are by a couple Christmas trees, and we'll undo that. And then there's one clamp where it's attached to the bottom of this thermostat housing. All right. Let's go ahead and get this auxiliary water pump out. There's an electrical connector right here, and it's got a little sliding lock, just like a lot of connectors. So just slide it back, slide the little lock back on the connector, squeeze, pull apart, just like that. Let me show you the slide. The sliding lock is the little white tab right there. So just pull that back and then give it a squeeze and pull it off. And then it's held on with, looks like, these 3 10mm bolts. Try not to lose them. There's one. Just come under here, get on that one. There we go. Okay. Grab that one so it doesn't fall into the abyss. There we go. And the final one here. Here we go. Okay, disconnect our water hose from thermostat housing. And now let's take this thing and tuck it back here somewhere where it'll be kind of out of our way. That way we don't have to disconnect any more things than necessary. Next, let's disconnect this hose from this portion of our water pump. So just squeeze these little tabs right here and pull that off. I've already squeezed those tabs, so there we go. And even draining the system, it didn't get all of it out, did it? Surprisingly. Oh well, there's a little bit more coming out there. No big deal. we'll clean it up. And then we're going to get this lower radiator hose off, squeeze clamp here, one of those spring clamps over there, and then goes down to our oil cooler at the bottom here, where we have a couple of other spring clamps on these two hoses. So we'll work on that next. Now, you didn't really think we could get this done without making a big mess under here, did you? No, I never can, even though I try my best. Well, we're getting down to it now. We're starting to see pretty decent access to the front timing cover. Still got a couple of these hoses to remove here, the coolant hoses, and then we will start with the intake and some of the accessories on the front. Just clear the room just a little bit more first. Alright, let's attack this hose from the thermostat housing here. So typical squeeze clamp here, and then one of our special favorites over here, little spring clamp thing. You kind of got to get, see if I can get you guys in here, you kind of got to get underneath the edge of it, pry it up a little bit. You see there's the end of it. I like to use a pick. Oh, there we go. Okay, once you get underneath it like that, then you can kind of lift the thing up out of the way, and it'll hold itself in place. And you can get in here, give it a good old-fashioned wiggle side to side, and give it a pull, and it'll come off. May need a little bit of persuasion if it's been on there for a little while, but as long as you got this spring clip slid up like that, then it'll pull off. I've just got to use both hands. Alright, so spring clamps loose here. We pull that off. We took the little metal spring out of there. You can pull this off, and then some coolant will come out of there, and then two regular spring clamps down here on the oil cooler, and again coolant's going to pour out of there. It's amazing how much coolant is still trapped in this engine even after I dumped all the coolant from the lowest point. But it is what it is, and you're just not going to be able to keep a nice clean work environment when you're doing this. That really opened up the space quite a bit, didn't it? Alright, that's good. So what do we want to do next? So we've got our air conditioning line here. We're not going to do anything with that. I don't want to have to recharge the system. Now we are going to have to remove this intake and these valve covers, and it looks like we've got some of these hoses still tethered to the valve cover here, although this little bracket that they're really tethered to will unbolt from it. So we'll just undo this bracket and push it to the side, and so I might just do that next. It looks like either a 7 or an 8 millimeter. We'll pull that bracket off of there and go ahead and maybe take the intake off of this thing. I'll go ahead and remove this bracket here. It's held on with two 8 millimeter nuts. And then you can pull it off and put it to the side. And then we're still tethered over here. It looks like a Christmas tree and some zip ties. So we'll get a little puller, trim puller, and pull it off of here. That way we can move these hoses to the side and get them out of the way of removal of our valve covers. Front's pretty much cleared out, so let's go ahead and move up here to the intake. And in order to get this intake off, it's bolted down to the top of the valve covers. So the intake has to come off before the valve covers can come off. The intake is held down with, it looks like 8 millimeter bolts, and we're going to have to undo a few of these connections. So let's just start with this here, throttle body control. So anytime you see one of these little clips like that, just remember that's a locking clip. So just pull that tab back, whatever color it is, white, red, whatever, and then you can pinch and squeeze what's left to get this thing off, like so. All right, there's another connector back here. Looks like some kind of manifold pressure sensor, so it's got a white clip that we need to move back. Pinch and squeeze, get it off, and I'm going to tag these so that I remember to put them back together. And before we can unbolt our intake, we've got one more hose here. It's got a blue clip, so just like the rest of these kind with half a blue clip or whatever. Some of them are green or whatever. You see there's a little blue tab right there. So pull that tab forward and then wiggle and pull the whole thing off. Same thing with this guy. Just pull the tab forward, wiggle and pull, get the thing off of there like so. I'll just set it here for now so that I'll remember where it goes, and I'll mark that for, or take a picture of that. Now to get the intake off, as I said, we got these 8mm bolts all the way back, and then we'll check and make sure if there's anything else that's tethered to it before we lift it up. Now we've got the intake bolts loose, all of these 8mm, and then there's this wiring harness which has a few Christmas trees that were stabbed into it. These two are broke off, and so it's only really got one left in the back here, but we'll pry that thing out of there. All right, and see if that's all there is to getting this thing off. So let's see if it'll just lift right up now and come out. The nice thing about these bolts on this intake manifold is that they're all captured, so they don't come out. And there it is. So there's the manifold gaskets as well, and you can see it goes down through the intake. The valve covers. All right. So now that we've got the valve or the intake off, you can see that we've got straight runs right into the inside of our engine here, and we do not want anything falling down in there causing trouble. So the first thing that I do, and I would highly recommend that you do anytime you open up an engine, is to stuff some rags down into all the intake ports that you open up so that nothing can accidentally fall in and mess up the internals of your engine. Intake is removed, so we're getting closer to removing our valve covers. So I'm going to go ahead and remove things off the top of the valve covers that are in the way. We've got this hose here, and it has some kind of a sensor attached to it. So we'll take this off. It's got a white tab, slide back, pinch and squeeze to pull it off of there. And as is my custom, of course, I'm marking it so I remember it. And then this guy here, little blue thing, you slide back and then wiggle and pull. Oh, there she goes. All right, so these hoses, we will remember where they go and set them aside. And let's continue removing things off of the top of the valve cover so that we can get them off of here. And it looks like we've got this wiring harness which is tethered down with some Christmas trees. We'll work those out and unplug things from where they are plugged in. This Christmas trees again. And then we've got these solenoids for the cam phasers. We'll go ahead and pull up the white locks on them. Give them the old pinch and squeeze to get them off of there. There we go. There's that one. And then we'll go ahead and take the coils out as well. And then we'll start working on the high pressure fuel pump here. Other side, we've got some coils, a wiring harness, and then it's always, when you're going to remove the valve cover valve covers, it's always a good idea to remove your dipstick as well, because this thing will be hanging up down inside the engine. Ask me how I know. Okay, so I've gone through here and I've disconnected all of the connectors and unconnected all the little Christmas trees, and you'll especially pay really close attention back here on the back side of these valve covers. Even when you think you got them all, go back and look again, because I bet you there's more. There was dozens, it seems, of connections to keep these wires tethered down. But once you get them undone, you can kind of tuck them over to the side, and if necessary, we'll take like a bungee or something like that and kind of pull it over to the side out of the way. And then the same thing on this other side here. Just undo all your connections, all your Christmas trees, everything that you think you might need out of your way, and just kind of tuck everything to the side. And then we should be good to start at least unbolting this side. We'll go ahead and take our coils out, but we'll unbolt the valve cover on this side. And then on this side, we're going to have to undo the fuel system. Here we'll undo this fuel filter or fuel inlet to the high pressure fuel pump, and this hose here looks like needs to come off. And so we'll show you that here in a second. You got to be very careful with that, obviously, because there'll be some fuel that leaks out of that. Car's been off for a day or two, so there's not a ton of pressure still in the system, but there will be some. All right, pull in the coil packs next. Pretty simple. Just undo the 8mm bolts that go with them and just pop them straight up, and you can set them aside. They don't go in any particular order, so you can just set them all in a pile. Now that the coils are out of the way, we can go ahead and start, at least on the driver's side here, removing the valve covers themselves. There are some bolts around the edges, and these are studs, so we need to remove these this bracket to get to the bolt underneath. Alright, so I've gone around and I've loosened up all these 10mm bolts around the perimeter of our valve cover on the driver's side. And just a note, there's not one in the center on the back here. There's no bolt in the center back on this side, but on the passenger side there is one. So we'll remember that when you're taking this thing apart. And these things, this car's got 100,000, a little over 100,000 miles on it, and so these gaskets may be stuck down pretty good. And so you're going to want to try and pry up in a safe place, where you can get a little bit of meat underneath there, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. But even with that, especially these seals around the spark plug tubes, they like to stick on there really good. And so if you plan on replacing them, which I do, there's a way that we can put a pick in there and kind of break that seal a little bit, and that'll help these things to lift off a little easier, and I'll show you that too. So these seals around these spark plug tubes here, they're going to be stuck really good. And so you can take a pick or a sharp pointer of some kind and jam it down in between your spark plug tube and that seal. Again, you're going to have to replace these seals. It's a good idea to do it anyway. This will just make things a lot easier. And once you start to break that seal, you'll see some of the oil oozing up through there, kind of self-lubricates. And these things will pop off a lot easier if you do it that way. Just know that if you do this, use the pointy end on the rubber and not on the metal portion here of the spark plug tube. You don't want to gouge that or scratch it too bad, or else it won't seal when you put the new one on there. And also, just as an additional help, you can spray a little bit of WD on that seal as you're starting to pry on it. It'll kind of work its way down against that seal in the spark plug tube.